Welcome, everybody. It's Margaret Floydberry here from the Eat Naked Kitchen. And today I am chatting with Christine Yee from Potli. Hey, Christine.
Hello, thanks so much for having me on.
Oh, gosh, thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited to chat. So I have been playing around with your amazing products and loving them. And what I'd love to do is let's start with the journey that you took getting to creating this company, because it's a really cool story. So can you share that with us and a little bit about what kind of products you guys sell?
Yeah, of course. So Potli at its core makes cannabis and hemp infused ingredients. So both CBD and THC, and we're working with other cannabinoids like THCA and CBN to create everyday staples like honey, olive oil, apple cider vinegar. We have a chili oil, we have a sriracha that are infused with the health benefits of cannabis. So we noticed that a lot of the edibles products on the market were really things like gummies and chocolates, which we know and we love, but really we felt that edibles have such high potential because everyone knows how to eat something and people eat all day. But smoking has a higher barrier to entry. Yet at the same time, why were all the edibles products out there so confection and candy based and not intrinsically healthy when edibles really has the potential to be the healthiest way to consume cannabis? So we wanted to create really meticulously sourced and delicious ingredients that are infused. And our founding story, we started in 2017, so it's been about a 3-year journey now. The cannabis landscape looked very different back then. To start a cannabis company, you basically submitted a piece of paper and they allowed cottage industries so you could make things like at home and bring it to a dispensary and sell it, which is so different from the world we operate in now. But my co-founder,
How is that
Felicity.
different? I just would love to hear how it's different now.
Yeah. So now everything is in a system called Metric, which is a state-owned track and trace system. And so every input from when you are growing marijuana to processing it and curing it and extracting it, putting it into an edible, sending it to a distributor, sending it to a retailer, that entire process is tracked and traced so you know exactly where all your inputs are coming from. The regulation for cannabis products are much higher than a typical food product. So the food that you are getting at a dispensary, actually, in many ways, you can trust more than food that you'd buy at your local grocery store. But there's a lot of packaging requirements, regulation requirements. Every single step in the supply chain requires a different type of license. So we have a manufacturing license, but that's all we can do. We can't sell it ourselves. We can't grow it ourselves. And so it's a very regulation heavy industry. And really by some miracle, my co-founder Felicity and I, who actually met as randomly paired roommates freshman year of college and stayed best friends and all that, even though we're both from the San Francisco Bay Area, we grew up like 20 miles apart. I came home for Thanksgiving break one year from New York. I was living in New York, and her dad had started beekeeping to get really hyper local honey for her mom, who is asthmatic and would take honey, lemon, and water and drink it as a tea every morning. And we were just inspired by it. I tried the honey for the first time and realized that I'd been eating fake honey my whole life. And that got me thinking about what other ingredients I was eating that were fake. But cannabis was a burgeoning industry at that point. And we thought there's no way that our mothers would ever smoke a joint or even eat a gummy. But if we created a really quality product that they can trust and were attracted to intrinsically, then this is a way that they could get their medicine. So that's how Potli was born.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So I want to, we were talking a little bit about this beforehand, and there's so many different permutations to this, right? I mean, cannabis, I'm assuming it's kind of like the global, you've got, your THC, your CBD, there's hemp in there. I'm sure there's all sorts of things that I don't even know. This isn't something that I'm like super seasoned with. So can you kind of help us understand the differences between all these different elements of things? Because we just hear a lot about it. And for somebody who's new to this and who's considering this, can you help us navigate that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So the cannabis plant itself is really not, I think a lot of the complications are coming from semantics, and the semantics complications are coming from regulation. So how I would break it down is you have the cannabis plant, That's it. It is the umbrella term for the cannabis plant. Then you have marijuana and you have hemp, which are two variations of the cannabis plant.
Yeah.
So when I say cannabis, when most people refer to cannabis, they're primarily referring to marijuana. And the only difference between the marijuana plant and the hemp plant is that the hemp plant has less than 0.3% THC by legal definition.
Right.
So it is this exact same thing. They're both cannabis plants. It just does not have THC. So when we say things like THC, CBD, it can come from either hemp or the marijuana plant. It's all coming from cannabis. It is just talking about the derivative of where those cannabinoids and those chemical compounds came from, because they have legal ramifications of where you can sell it.
Right. Okay. That's really helpful. That's really helpful. Okay.
Yeah. And I'll note that across the board, Potli, because we make both cannabis and marijuana products, you can assume that we essentially make 3 variations of everything we produce. So our honey, for example, we have a hemp infused honey, which has CBD in it, and just CBD. Yeah. We have a cannabis infused honey that is CBD dominant. So we actually have a CBD honey that you buy in dispensaries, but you cannot buy it anywhere else. Okay. And then we have a THC honey that, is THC honey you buy in a dispensary. So it gets very confusing. And to add a layer of complication to it, the reason why hemp and CBD is becoming a little bit harder to navigate in and of itself is, from a regulatory perspective, we can sell hemp-derived CBD most places within the United States. However, there is a gray area from the FDA around CBD-infused food. However, hemp-infused food is somehow allowed and kosher and fine. And so, for example, we as a company have been undergoing rebranding and relabeling, where we will be more hemp-led than CBD-led, even though the active ingredient within our products is CBD. And so something I always tell consumers is, if you just want hemp oil because hemp oil is good for you, that's great. You can literally buy that at Whole Foods and use it on your skin, use it, whatever. Totally. But there are only trace amounts of CBD in that hemp oil. If you're looking for CBD, that active ingredient specifically, you have to do a little bit of digging into whether or not this hemp oil is you could have 1,000 milligrams of hemp oil and only 10 milligrams of CBD. Yeah. But now, because of labeling, it could say 200 milligrams of hemp oil, but really that is 200 milligrams of CBD. So,
oh goodness, it's definitely complicated.
Yes.
That's so interesting, because one of the pieces that I had been reading a little bit about is comparing, things that come from hemp and saying it was the hemp seed that had almost none of the cannabinoids and none of the benefits, versus, the CBD, but they weren't making the distinction that there's a whole hemp plant, right? They were talking specifically about the seed. So that's a really, that's very helpful what you're sharing here in terms of understanding how it all fits together. And I noticed, that's one of the reasons we were chatting about this before we turned the record button on, is that I realized I've been describing, the foods that I've been trying from you guys as CBD infused. And then I saw this distinction, and then I read the bottle, it said hemp infused. I was like, have I been saying the wrong thing? So no, it is CBD infused.
It is CBD infused. Yeah. All the milligram content that is included is CBD content that is hemp derived. Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Got it. So tell me a little bit about the big picture mission that you have with Potli.
Yeah, our goal with Potli is to literally and figuratively bring cannabis from outside of this dark hidden stash drawer that you've got somewhere to really the front and center of your kitchen island or your kitchen pantry. Cannabis really underwent a PR makeover back in the day when it was demonized and a lot of negative stigmas were applied, many of which were caused by big business, large industries, a lot of racially motivated categorizations as well, when for a long time it was revered for its health benefits. And there are also elements of the cannabis plant where we love getting high. Great, do it. If you don't want to do it, that's fine as well. And there are actually a lot of studies that show that microdosing or taking small doses that do not get you high over time have a lot of amazing cumulative benefits. And so for us, we want people to see the cannabis as medicine, as things that are preventative as well, things that can be taken at low dose, things that don't get you high if you don't want them to, but can if you want to, and just create everyday products. And we think that cannabis in some ways is kind of taking the progression of like the wine industry, for example. And we want use of it to be normalized, to help facilitate social interactions, to help facilitate self-care. And the more that we open up about it, the higher the quality of the products, right? Because if hemp CBD, for example, were to be regulated in the way that it should be, no one would really have to worry as much about the sourcing and whether or not the products that they were buying could be trusted. So overall, we want to help usher in these new products. And as the industry opens up, I think we have a lot of newcomers, and the more quality products that we can present to these newcomers, the better for really shaping the way that society thinks about cannabis.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I want to follow a thread that you've dropped in there about the idea of microdosing and some of the benefits of that over time. Can you speak a little bit to that? That'd be fascinating.
Yeah, of course. So for example, people have microdosed, and microdosing can be, it is tailored to you. It in many ways is a non-specific science, right? So a microdose to you might be a full dose to someone else. But typically, I always tell people like 1 to 3 milligrams is a microdose. Anything less than 5 for me is considered a microdose. But 5 milligrams in an edible sometimes will definitely get you high. So it depends on the form that you're taking it in. But for example, when people have microdosed over time, some studies have shown that this has helped with repairing brain cells and helping with cognitive function over time. Whereas if you were consuming a lot of cannabis and heavy doses of it, it actually has shown to have the opposite effect and contribute to things like memory loss. And if you are prone to mental illnesses, it can be triggering there. So cannabis is not for everybody. I don't agree with kind of this narrative these days, especially with CBD, that it's a cure-all for everybody, because it's not. But when used responsibly, it can really be amazing in a lot of different ways.
Right. I think I'm so glad to hear you say that. And I think that it goes for everything, right? I mean, there's so many things that there's some phenomenal benefits to it, and certain people often will really benefit. Some people will be neutral. Some people it's not the right thing for, but there is just not there's no magic bullets, right? And so I appreciate you saying that, because I think that's a really important piece in all of this. Talk to me a little bit more about who could benefit from these types of products, and let's kind of separate them out, since you have can we separate it into 2 categories? So we have basically those that have the THC that you would buy at a dispensary, and then those that is just the CBD. So can you share let's start with the just CBD. So who are the types of people or certain conditions, certain things that can really benefit from that? And then on the flip side, who really should be careful and avoid that?
Yeah, so I'll start with the CBD, and I'll start with the negatives. I actually haven't come across very many people who have true negative symptoms of CBD. The one thing I have heard, though, is some people developing like a rash. So an allergic
topical
reaction.
Or ingested?
No, even ingesting.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So some kind of allergic reaction.
Some kind of allergic reaction. So it must be to the plant itself. I don't think that it really has much to do with the CBD, but I spoke to a journalist the other day where she would get this when ingesting any kind of CBD edible. And so there's an allergy there. I'm not sure what causes it, truthfully, but some people have an allergic reaction. So I mean, that could be anybody. But besides that, I also haven't heard instances of people taking like too much CBD and it negatively impacting their day-to-day functionality. I think that CBD is great for people who know to be very intentional about the ingredients that are going into their body, because it isn't something that you feel intoxicated by and feel the effects of right away. You do have to be hyper aware, but it's most commonly used for stress and anxiety. So if you feel that you are, you know, are in a high pressure work environment or just need something to balance out your mental health. I think CBD is a great way to do that. And it's really great overall for inflammation, which I think everybody, given all the like stressors that we bring onto our bodies, working towards anti-inflammatory ingredients and ingesting those on a regular basis, I think is incredibly important. So I consider CBD to be great for most people living in modern society because of how stressed and inflamed we tend to be.
Totally. Yeah. Is it safe, the CBD, obviously not with the THC, but the CBD, what about kids?
So I have a lot of clients who actually use CBD for their children because their children do get a lot of anxiety,
Right.
but they don't want to bring like over-the-counter medicine.
Right.
CBD and a lot of the assurance of it into the mainstream has a lot to do with, for example, the company Charlotte's Web, who made this CBD concentrate for somebody who, you know, had seizures and epilepsy. And so it's very, very good in terms of serious illnesses that CBD is good for. It's good for like helping with epilepsy and seizures. We have a client who buys our product in bulk actually, and her mom has Parkinson's disease. And so she likes our honey to help with her muscle tremors. So there's certainly that aspect too.
Right, absolutely. To finish on that thought, the THC, so people who should and shouldn't do that.
Yes. So THC we love because it has such an obvious recreational output, right? And so I love a little bit of THC also for stress and anxiety, but mostly because I want to like to markate in my day when I'm done working and when I want to relax. And I'm like, I treat it sort of like as I would a glass of wine or a cocktail. But in terms of medical illnesses, it is great for pain relief. CBD topically, like having balms and things, are good for acute areas that you're trying to solve for. But overall pain, ingesting THC is really the way to go.
Okay.
So the reason why most medical programs exist is because it was used as an herbal pain relief, right? So, so definitely great there. It's not so much for people who are prone to mental illnesses. It's not so much for people who start to feel very anxious or stressed out if they don't feel in control of their own element. There can be an element of paranoia if you take too much. For that, I always recommend taking a little bit of CBD maybe to help with anxiety, although it's not gonna cure it by any means. Chewing on black peppercorns and the terpenes there have been known to help with stress when you're too high. But yeah, a great way to ingest cannabis is having a bit of both. So that's why I personally like our cannabis-infused items a little bit more in our dispensaries than our hemp-infused ones that we sell everywhere, because it does have a little bit of THC in it for the CBD and vice versa. And the entourage effect is this idea that the more diverse cannabinoids you have, the better they work because they work in tandem with each other. And so I always try to encourage ingesting a diverse amount of cannabinoids.
Okay. Now, if you're doing something like the honey, for example, is there a certain amount that you would need to consume in order to get those benefits, or the oils, or any of these? I mean, the way I've been using it has been, I've just, started using it like the honey. So you had suggested putting it in coffee, and I haven't used a sweetener in my coffee in years. And, but I recently had to say sort of a permanent goodbye to dairy, and I was feeling sad about that. So the way I made myself feel better about that is when I switched to my nut milks, I brought in a little bit, and I probably use only like a quarter of a teaspoon of the honey. And I do that, but I'll have a couple cups. So I get a little bit in there, and I love the taste of it. Am I getting any kind of benefit, or is that just like, it's so minimal that it's not even, I mean, it tastes delicious, but, in terms of getting any kind of the systemic benefits, is that enough? And, I know each food item, I suppose, is going to be a little bit different in terms of the dosing, but is the idea just get enhanced benefits from however much you use, or should you use a certain amount?
It's more of the former, and it also depends on you and your body and your composition. I actually, we used to have to label hemp CBD products as non-psychoactive. Now the term is non-intoxicating because it is to an extent psychoactive. I personally,
Can you
yes.
explain that?
So psychoactive really just means that it, has mental impacts.
Right.
And for me, I think its aid in like stress and anxiety can be categorized as a psychoactive impact. And so now we're supposed to say non-intoxicating, as in it's not like alcohol, it's not like THC, but it is psychoactive. And so I actually am very sensitive to CBD still. I consume a lot, but I'm sensitive to it. So for me, like 10 milligrams, I feel it. Like I do feel it. Like there is a cerebral impact. Some people can take like 100 milligrams of CBD and they're like, nothing's happening. Like I don't feel anything. So the dosage depends on you. But what I always tell people is to treat 10 milligrams as a full dose. If you're a total newcomer, start with 5 to see how you feel, because I do know people who, another negative impact of CBD. I know some people who have said that they felt very, very groggy. On the other end of the spectrum, I know people who've said that they felt really, really amped up and like they had taken Adderall or something. And I'm like, that's really strange. Like these are very opposite reactions, but it depends on who you are, I guess. So 5 is a starter dose. 10, I would say, is a full dose. If you need more, take more. You can't really overdo it. But I think what you did in putting it like a half teaspoon, you said?
It's just a quarter teaspoon. I mean, the tiniest bit, because I don't really do a lot of sugar. So
a quarter teaspoon is about like right under 1 milligram. So that's like a super, super microdose. Of our honey. Our olive oil, for example, is a little bit more concentrated. So it depends on what you're using.
I really have to say, one of the things I love about you guys is that it is infused into food, because that's my thing. But it's not all I mean, you've got the honey, yes, but it's not just like candy. I mean, the chocolates and the this and the that and the gummies and that feels, that delivery system. I mean, for somebody who barely eats any kind of sugar, it's not going to ever be something that I consume. But I love the idea of having it in my olive oil that I can drizzle on top of my dinner, that, and the sriracha, like the chili oils. I love that. Can you tell us a little bit more about sort of your, you mentioned at the beginning, like really wanting to do something kind of more on the savory side of things. Do you have more stuff coming out that we can play with?
We do. We have a launch actually in a few days, Monday, the 28th of September. We are launching our brand new SKU called Dream Honey. And Dream Honey is a mix of CBN, CBD, and on the dispensary side, there's going to be a bit of THC. On the hemp side, nationwide, there's going to be just a smidge of melatonin. And so it really helps you get to sleep and stay asleep. And we have been testing out different ratios, and we are on one that we really like. And I have noticed that it helps me fall asleep, gets me in like bedtime mode. I don't wake up as much in the middle of the night. And then when I wake up in the morning, I feel ready to go. I don't feel any grogginess. So I'm really excited about it, because we also made the jars 4-ounce jars, not 6-ounce jars. And so they are more potent, because we wanted to be cognizant of people not wanting to consume that much sugar before bed. So the normal serving size for our honey is a tablespoon, which is a lot. Now it's a teaspoon. So excited about it.
I can't wait. And by the time people are seeing this, that is going to be available. So it's called just Dream Honey, you said?
It's called Dream Honey, yes.
I love it. And you said CBD and CBN. Can you explain the difference between those two pieces too?
Yeah, of course. So CBN is another minor cannabinoid that I think that like a year from now, 6 months from now, I think is going to be much more well known than it is on this very day, because I've seen a lot of products rolling out with it over just the past few months. But CBN is known for helping you get to sleep. It helps make you sleepy. But in terms of its other health benefits, it also is very good for helping with inflammation. It's also good for helping with pain. It inhibits the growth of cancer cells from research as well. it's actually, interestingly enough, what THC over time, when oxidized, turns into CBN.
Oh, interesting.
So, interestingly, if you have old weed,
Yeah.
that you're not storing properly and it's old, and you've ever like smoked it and noticed that you just felt really sleepy, it's probably because the
CBN.
THC has converted into CBN.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
really interesting, isn't it? So actually, back in the day, people thought that CBN was actually the active cannabinoid that made you high, because there was a high presence of it in the plants that you consumed and then got high from. And then they found out, oh no, it's THC. THC just turns into CBN.
Got it. Wow.
But it's also not psychoactive. So,
Okay.
or
Amazing.
not intoxicating.
Well, I can't wait to try it. Tell me a little bit, how can people find stuff? Do they just go to your website, Get Potli?
Yeah, just go to getpotli.com is where you'll find recipes, and then you'll find a list of California-based dispensaries that we're located in.
Okay.
And then potlishop.com is where you can actually buy things online.
Awesome.
So Dream Honey is launching for pre-orders right now. We've made a couple hundred press preview kits. So if you're one of the first buyers, you'll get a little sleep mask that says Dream Honey, and it's super cute, and they come in these little satin bags. So yeah, I mean, I'm really excited about it. And we created a code called Eat Naked, no spaces, and that'll be 15% off your purchase on potlishop.com if you're so inclined.
Yay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Well, you guys, go check it out. I've been playing with these products now for a few weeks and totally loving them. I cannot wait to try that, the Dream Honey. It sounds
Yes, we're shipping out in the next few days, so we'll definitely get you some.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, you guys check it out. We'll put links to all of the stuff below. Thank you so much. We'll put links to your socials and all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
So appreciate your time with us here today.
Yeah, no, thank you. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to just DM us on Instagram. We're a very small team, so it's me. I'm the one answering your DMs. So
Awesome.
that's a direct line if I can help with anything else.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Christine. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Margaret. Have an amazing day, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.